Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to be exploring the hidden financial architecture where every day low-income individuals actually end up subsidizing the banking system and Wall Street. We often think of finance as a ladder, right, where those at the bottom just kind of have less access, but the data reveals a totally different reality. The financially fragile aren't just excluded, they are actually a foundational, incredibly high-margin profit center.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the hidden poverty tax, examine the anatomy of a cross-subsidy, look into securitizing subprime debt, and finally wrap up with the ultimate financial takeaway.
All right, part one, the hidden poverty tax. Let's start with a really jarring reality that completely reframes basic banking from a simple service into a regressive poverty tax.
Listen to this. A 2022 Consumer Financial Protection Bureau report found a massive disparity. 34% of households making under $65,000 were charged overdraft or non-sufficient fund fees. Now compare that to just 10% of high-income households earning over $175,000. Even as banks start to reprice some of these fees, the burden remains overwhelmingly concentrated on lower-income earners.
And the frequency of these penalties? It's honestly staggering. A 2024 analysis of Financial Health Network data shows that nearly half of these low-income households paid at least one overdraft charge in 2022. But it gets worse. Among those paying these charges, a solid 1/5 are hit 10 or more times a year. Just imagine living on an incredibly tight budget, only to have double-digit fees repeatedly extracted from your account. It's brutal.
We see this exact same disparity over in auto loans too. According to 2023 Experian data, a prime borrower pays about a 9.3% APR on a used car loan. But deep subprime borrowers, we're talking folks with FICO scores between 300 and 500, they face geometrically higher financing rates of over 21%. They are literally paying a massive premium just to get the basic transportation they need to get to work.
Which brings us to part two, anatomy of a cross-subsidy. Let's look at how the mechanics of this actually operate as a systemic mechanism.
The absolute crucial concept here is the cross-subsidy. So what does this all mean? Well, the financially fragile are unknowingly participating in a system where their failed cash flow buffers are turned into a massive profit center. Banks actually design free checking accounts around a high-margin fee tail. Essentially, people who rarely overdraw are being subsidized by heavy overdrafters. The most vulnerable pay the cost to offset those free perks enjoyed by wealthier, fully banked customers.
To really ground this in reality, let's look at a 2016 Pew case study. They profiled a part-time worker in a southern metro making just $11 an hour. In a single year, this person was hit with 12 $35 overdraft fees. That is $420 stripped away from a $12,000 annual income. That's roughly 3.5% of their entire yearly earnings, wiped out, just from trying to manage basic cash flow.
You see, this poor tax is actually a multi-layered financial architecture. It spans from overdrafts for folks making under $30K to subprime auto lenders targeting low FICO scores, all the way to the payday loan ecosystem. Studies show over half of payday loan users are actually in the $25,000 to $50,000 income range, repeatedly rolling over short-term loans with effective APRs of 300 to 500%. It's a system specifically built to target the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle.
Okay, part three, securitizing subprime debt. Let's move to the macroeconomic layer and see how this builds into complex Wall Street mechanisms.
Because these high APRs, they aren't just local penalties kept at your neighborhood bank or the corner dealership. No way. Through a process called securitization, these loans are pooled together into asset-backed securities and sold off to institutional investors. This is literally how the financial struggles of a deep subprime borrower are transformed into a tradable, high-yield asset on Wall Street.
Let's walk through the pipeline mapped out by a 2026 Federal Reserve working paper. Step 1. A low-income buyer gets a used car at a 21% APR. Step 2. The dealership bundles that loan into a security package. Step 3. Hedge fund-style investors purchase the riskiest parts of that package, pulling in 14 to 18% annualized yields. And Step 4. The dealer pockets the initial profit. Everyone wins, right? Well, except the borrower at the bottom.
This brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the extraction. Take a standard $15,000 used car over 48 months. A prime borrower pays about $2,700 in interest, but the deep subprime borrower, they pay roughly $8,000. That is a staggering $5,000 plus premium for the exact same car just to feed those investor yields on the back end.
According to Federal Reserve research, this subprime auto lending system has grown steadily since 2020, and it deliberately serves those with low or no credit. Why? Because the structured tranches safely absorb default risks, while guaranteeing massive payouts underwritten by the high interest payments from the world's most vulnerable borrowers. The originating dealers just safely offload that tail risk.
And that brings us to the bottom of the iceberg. Part 4, the ultimate financial takeaway.
The poor are not just excluded from the financial system. They are structurally embedded in it as a high-margin, high-risk tranche that subsidizes lower-cost products for the affluent. Let that sink in. When you analyze all the data we've covered, the objective reality is that the financially fragile aren't just standing outside the banking ecosystem looking in. They are a highly profitable, structurally embedded pillar holding it up. So, let's summarize. Overdrafts fund free checking for the wealthy. Subprime borrowing rates fuel juicy yields for Wall Street investors. And the fintechs and dealers capture massive profit margins while offloading the risk. The market is deliberately slicing these poverty tax cash flows into systemic cross-subsidies, allowing institutional investors to earn double-digit returns through financial engineering rather than pure philanthropy. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to look at the undeniable data we've covered today and ask yourself a question. Is our U.S. financial system simply a neutral playing field where risk is priced accordingly? Or is it fundamentally engineered to monetize the very existence of inequality? Just keep that in mind the next time you see an ad for a free checking account. Thanks so much for joining me today. Keep asking questions and keep learning.